So I think I should get started, Naomi.
Yeah, that would be good.
Awesome. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this special presentation of 1,000 Cranes for Recovery. We are in the process of trying to offer trainings that help people see how to better serve Asian Americans in the mental health field. My name is Libby Hardigan, and I work at SHARE. SHARE, the Self-Help and Recovery Exchange, is a peer-run organization based in Los Angeles. We've been around for about 25 years, and we have a strong commitment to serving underserved communities in particular. And we've been training peers for about 5 years to learn more about how to serve people in the mental health system. Asian Americans are chronically underserved in the mental health field, pretty much all over the world, but even here in Los Angeles, where we have a high concentration of Asian Americans, we're still not doing a particularly good job of serving them. We need to have more representation of people working in the field, as well as make it possible to overcome some of the barriers that make it hard for people to connect with services. So this is definitely a passion for me, not only because I would like to see my organization hire more Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders and do a good job of serving them, but also because my husband is part Asian and part Pacific Islander. So through him and his family, I've come to see what some of the challenges are with family members who have mental health diagnoses and who have really struggled. So a few months ago, earlier this year, Naomi contacted me, Naomi Mizushima, and we started talking about how there was a need to train more Asian Americans as peers. And I loved the idea, and I want to have more Asians participate in our peer trainings. And then Naomi came up with this incredible idea of 1,000 Cranes for Recovery, which she's going to explain this in a moment in more detail. But she started talking to me about it regularly, and I thought it was a really, really important project. This was before, the shootings happened in Atlanta, Georgia, which began to draw national attention to the uptick in hate crimes and discrimination towards Asians and Asian Americans in the United States, which has, really it's been a difficult time, but also I feel very encouraged that people are paying attention to this issue. It's really not a new phenomenon. It's been going on for, decades, and maybe even, since Asians have been coming to the United States, there have been significant issues. And we really feel that we can be part of the solution by informing ourselves, by learning more, by reaching out, by trying to understand someone from another culture, maybe even by trying to understand our own cultures better. So we hope that this will develop into a series of trainings. This particular training commemorates May as Mental Health Month, as well as May as Asian Pacific Heritage Month. But we hope to be able to do this in any month because really Asian Americans are so worthy of our attention and our compassion and our empathy. And so I'm very excited that you all have joined us here today to hear about our speakers, to learn more about how we can all do a better job of being aware of this issue and making our mental health system stronger. So with that, I would like to turn this over to Naomi to hear a little bit more about 1,000 Cranes for Recovery.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's amazing to see so many wonderful people taking the time to attend such an important event. As Libby said, my name is Naomi Mizushima, and I am a typical Asian American mom. So for years, instead of facing the fear and shame of mental health issues in our family, I swept it under the rug, hoping that it would go away, but it didn't. Instead, it turned into a crisis. I finally recognized in order to transform feelings of despair and isolation into hope and resilience, I needed to face stigma and practice compassion in order to heal. Let me put this on sharing so that I can put my screen up. If that's okay with everybody. Is this okay? Okay, so what? Oh, sorry.
It's great.
Okay, good. Okay, so what is 1,000 Cranes for Recovery? Well, traditionally in Japan, family and friends unite together to fold 1,000 cranes, origami cranes, to collectively wish for someone's recovery. When my husband was diagnosed with cancer, the Japanese community and family members folded 1,000 cranes for us. Cranes for recovery is to raise awareness and educate frontline care providers on cultural humility, to better connect and to serve the Asian American communities. Upon completing one training session and passing a simple quiz, which it will be simple, don't worry, every participant will fold 5 origami cranes to add to the 1,000 cranes to be publicly displayed. I don't know if you guys can see the picture. Is this kind of in the way, or is that okay?
No, it's fine.
You can see it? Okay, good. So that's what I'm envisioning to build, if we get enough people to fold the origami cranes. And so upon folding 10 origami cranes or completing 2 sessions, trainees can receive an origami crane-shaped pin, okay, to wear, like, as a symbol of hope and wish for recovery to better serve the Asian American communities. Okay. Next slide. Oops. Oh, how do I go to the next slide? I don't know. Oh, okay. So here are some reasons to consider the 1,000 cranes for recovery. Today, amidst the pandemic, Asian Americans are experiencing a surge of social stressors. Anti-Asian violence has increased 150%, and in New York, it's 1,900%. Asian American unemployment is a high 450%. Suicide is now the leading cause of death among Asian American youth between the age of 20 and 24 years old. Asian Americans are 3 times less likely to seek mental health treatment compared to other Americans. Asians represent more than 50% of the world population. Asian American Pacific Islanders are one of the fastest growing communities, consisting of 50 ethnic groups and speaking over 100 different languages. Understanding the Asian American mental health issues and practicing cultural humility warrants careful attention, because Asian Americans tend to retain cultural traits from their ancestral land. Here are some examples of cultural barriers for recovery. Even between my Japanese parents, there was a huge cultural disparity. For my mother, she suffered famine, death, and devastation through World War II in Japan, whereas my father lived as a privileged life, having graduated from an elite Tokyo University. He worked as a prominent scientist for the Japanese government. Then he was invited by the Japanese government as a physics professor and scientist at the University of Colorado in Boulder. As a young immigrant, my mother struggled in isolation with language and cultural barriers to raise 5 of us, daughters. Despite my father's personality disorder and years of physical, psychological, and even sexual abuse to the family, my mother served and guarded his reputation furiously and never acknowledged our dysfunctional family. Social dominance and social status overshadowed all and took priority over the well-being of the family. We were taught to, as Japanese say, gamma, or it means suppressing our emotions and pain. My mother once told me that because she didn't make a sound when she was in labor, the American doctor did not give her any pain medication. Back then in Japan, Japan had a very strict hierarchy system, and discrimination was often accepted openly among Japanese. My parents often discriminated against anyone that was of non-white race or lower class, even against other Japanese they thought were of lower class. Obviously, even mentioning the word mental health, illness would be unacceptable. In result of suppressing my childhood trauma, I didn't start going to therapists until 4 years ago when my father passed away. Even then, I still didn't want to recognize the mental health issues in my own family until my son told me 2 years ago that he was suffering from anxiety and suicidal thoughts. Then I started the 1,000 Cranes for Recovery. We at the 1,000 Cranes for Recovery commemorate the Asian American stories of resilience and recovery. And now I would like to introduce our guest speaker. Today, we are honored to have Korean American Mike and Seol as our distinguished guest speakers. Their comic book series titled Out of Order describes a powerful story of their personal journey in navigating schizophrenia and cultural barriers to their path of recovery. Without any further delay, please welcome Mike and Seol. Thank you. Oh, I should, actually, I forgot to introduce the team. So Linda Chong is the facilitator, and she's going to be doing the interview and the question and answer. Then Libby is going to be taking the quiz or managing the quiz. And Emma is going to be in charge of the folding of the origami cranes. And I think I sent a lot of you guys the origami crane, but if you didn't get it or you didn't maybe put your address down, I can send them after this session, because we're going to have a video of of how to fold these cranes, and you can fold them afterwards and then send it to me, and I will create the hopefully create the picture that's on your right. Okay, thank you, and please welcome Mike and Seol. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi, and thank you to everyone who was involved in putting this training together. So Naomi, Libby from Share, Wendy, Emma, Linda, we haven't officially met, but Linda, and thank you guys, the audience, for being here. I know that it's a Saturday afternoon, and you could be doing many other things. I was just laughing when Naomi was calling us distinguished speakers because we just want to preface everything by saying that we're not experts in anything. We're not in the mental health field. And we're just as ordinary people as you can get. I'm a school teacher. Mike it has been living with paranoid schizophrenia, so he doesn't have a job, like a paying job. He does work as an artist. Like we created a comic book together. Yeah, so we're just here to share our story, and that's all it is. We were very nervous because we've done some speaking occasions before, but I think just the fact that this is called a training just kind of like puts a little bit more pressure on me anyway. So I'm a little nervous. We're a little nervous, but we please just think of it as us sharing our story. And I do also want to say that this is just our story. Obviously, we're going to be talking about Korean American culture, Korean culture, but every family really is different. Every individual is different. And you'll see even in our story that even though Mike and I are both Korean Americans, we're both children of first generation Korean immigrants, our families are quite different in many ways. So please just keep that in mind, that when we talk about Korean culture, we're talking in general terms, but obviously everybody and every family is different. So when I heard for the first time that that statistic about Asian Americans being 3 times less likely to seek mental health help than white Americans, it was surprising, but at the same time not really surprising, because we're very familiar with the Korean culture. So in my mind, Korean culture, it's very focused on the family and really honoring the parents within the family, keeping up appearances that everything is okay, that everybody's successful, there's nothing wrong. And as Naomi mentioned, if there's some kind of problem or something shameful happening in the family, we'll sweep it under the rug, and we won't talk about it. Even within the family, we prefer not to talk about it. We'll just pretend like everything is okay. It is a very honor shame type of dynamics, and we're not taught to really share or talk about or express our emotions. I've literally seen my parents, each of them, cry once in my life. And one of them was my father. When his mom passed away, I saw him cry. And then my mom, I saw her when I was really little. She had gotten into a fight with my dad, and then she was doing the dishes, and I was behind her, so she didn't know that I could see her, but I could see her crying. And that's the only time I've seen her. That's the first and only time that I've seen my mom cry. And before then, I thought that parents don't cry. Like, I was shocked because she never expressed her emotion like that. And I feel like, especially in the Asian culture, there's you express other emotions, I feel like, but especially like sadness, you're supposed to hide it. You're supposed to hide your sadness. And I think that goes hand in hand with maybe not burdening other people, making it seem like everything's okay. So, and there's also very much that authority, obey authority, do your duty. So we're not really taught when we're young to speak up or seek help. We're supposed to just, don't cause trouble, don't burden anybody, just obey authority, do what you're supposed to do. So I'll talk about my family a little bit, and then Mike will talk about his, and then we'll get into his diagnosis and how that unfolded. So my family came to the United States from Korea in 1991. So I was nine years old, going on 10. I turned 10 like 3 months later. And we came to California, and we've been in California ever since. My father actually came with us, but then he went back to Korea because he had a job as a professor, so he didn't want to give up that job. So he kind of supported us from Korea. And then so my mom overnight kind of became a single mother. So she had to take care of all of us, me and my older sisters. And I think when we come to like a lot of Korean immigrants, even in Korea, Christianity, church is a very big part of our lives. But when we come to the United States as immigrants, I think it becomes even bigger because it's somewhere that we can go where, you know, we can meet other Korean people, be part of that community where people are speaking our language. So when we came here, pretty much right away, my family, my cousin's family who had been living here for a long time already, they took us to their church. And then it actually ended up being that the pastor of that church was Mike's dad. So that's how we met. So I've actually known Mike for like 30 years or something like that. So that's how we met. So I was around 10 and we have a pretty big age gap. So he was 18. I mean, obviously we didn't start dating back then. So we started dating like way later after he was diagnosed with schizophrenia when I was in college. So that's how our family met. And then I'll let Mike talk about his family and his immigration story.
So hi, my parents are they're Korean immigrants, and they moved from Korea to Chicago, Illinois, back in the early 1970s, and my dad had gotten like a job offer here in Chicago, and so like him and my mom moved, and so they were living in Chicago. I was born in about 1973, and so that's where we were living for a little while. And not long afterward, our family moved to Texas, and that's kind of where I grew up. Um, Spent most of my childhood there. My younger brother and youngest sister in our family they were both born in Texas, and so yeah, and or it was there in Texas that my dad became a pastor, a Korean Christian pastor, and so they got really busy with that, and if you guys know about Asian culture, I'm sure at least some do. You know that like there's like the Asian parents in particular, they place like a high value on education, and they like have high hopes for their children, and they put like a really big expectation on their kids. And my parents were pretty much the same in that regard, and they really had high hopes for me. My mom in particular she was convinced that I could become a doctor, you know, and when I got older, which is a little bit of a joke between me and Seol, to be honest, because like to be honest with you, like I have never actually been very good at math or science, and I've always been pretty much just about a 3.1 student my whole life, not particularly great, you know. And I don't think I could have, even had I not gotten ill. I'm not sure if that possibly could have happened, but I mean, I really love my mom, you know what I mean? And like I know she just wanted the best for her. But anyway, like so yeah, so that's what happened. And so we were living in Texas, and then when I finished junior high school, our family moved to California, here in California, where we currently are. This was back in about 1986, 1987, around there. And so we've been living here ever since. And so after I finished high school back in 1991, um, like I was kind of like drafted, sort of in a manner of speaking, into doing church work because that's what my dad, you know, was doing. You know, so that's what I started to do too. And around maybe I did it for about maybe 8, 9 years, and around 1999, 2000, the year 2000, around there, that's when it's like things had been getting progressively worse for me mentally, you know. But I at first, because I was going through it, I didn't know what was going on, you know. All I knew was that it just things were just getting overwhelmingly stressful as time went by. And yeah, it was around 1999, 2000 is when it kind of collapsed my life. And I was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, a mild case at the time. And so to let you guys know a little bit about the symptoms that I deal with, I actually hear voices, and these voices they say just horrible, terrible, just the worst things that you could imagine, to me, and cursing and just trying to command me around and just stuff like that. And at the same time, I also have this paranoia that there are people that are out there who are responsible for the voices. And it's when I'm in full blown paranoia mode, it's what I truly believe that there are people out there. I don't know who they are, um, and they have spent like years and decades just like doing this to me. You know what I mean? Just doing just bad stuff. And I actually, what to give you an idea, a more exact idea about what it is I exactly believe in my paranoid thoughts. I actually believe that I'm not sure if you've ever seen the movie The Truman Show with Jim Carrey. Yeah, you know how he's on video, right? His whole life is on video, and that's kind of what I think, in my paranoia, and it's been like this awful, terrible burden to deal with, and as you can imagine, like it just makes it so that I can't like function well, from on a day-to-day basis. And anyway, so yeah, that's a little bit about my story there.
Yeah, so he's actually yeah, he's also in the past smelled gas. So
Yeah, right.
there was a period of time when he thought that people were gassing him. And then he does also hallucinate in terms of like seeing things, but he will still deny it. He like in his mind it was real. So he's seen people, throwing little pellets of gas at him, like making a circle around him. So obviously to me, like he was hallucinating, but he still to this day that he will deny. Like there are certain things that sometimes he'll be like, oh, maybe I was just being paranoid, but there are certain things that he still insists on that it was real, because to him it was. So just to give you an idea, I think, because I think that we do want to focus on talking about culture, and how Mike being diagnosed with paranoia, how that affected like our families and things like that. First of all, I think it's really important to stress that Mike is the first son in his family. And so for some of you guys, that may not mean anything, but in the Korean culture, the first son has a very important role in the family. So the first son is supposed to bring honor to the whole family by being successful. They're expected to take care of the parents later on in their old age. I'm forgetting something. And they're also supposed to, sorry, notes, because I know that there's a quiz later. So, oh, yeah. So also having a son in the family is really important, because they're the ones who are going to carry the family name down. So we as a couple are supposed to have a son, so that the last name will get carried down. So all of those things, and Mike is kind of being humble about when he was young, he really wanted to become a comic book artist. And so even though he wasn't very good at like things like math or science that his parents wanted him to be, he very much was good at in the arts. So his parents really wanted him to, because in the Korean community, if you tell your parents that you want to be an artist, they'll be like, no, you can't make any money doing art, right? So they will try to get you a tutor or like make you practice. And so he always tells his story that like every summer his mom would make up these like math problems, like and
like
then make
246,325 multiplied by 146,256. Like that's what she would do literally.
Yeah, so
on like just like rows and columns of them.
Yeah. So
anyway,
I think he was like truly traumatized by that experience, and so he just hates math. But he was quite talented in art and drawing. So eventually, though, I think his parents were kind of okay, became kind of accepted that he wants to do art, because he, after in high school, he got into art center, which is one of the best art schools, I think in California, or maybe even in the nation. So I think it was something that his parents could still be proud of and say, oh, because we also kind of joke about, like, in a loving way, that his mom loves to brag about his children. So it was something that still gave her that bragging right, like, oh, my son got into this like prestigious art school. So there, and I knew him at church, so I know I kind of have a I think a unique perspective on, like, from an outsider point of view, what kind of person Mike was. So he talked about, working at church, and he was one of the leaders at church. So he worked with the youth group, with the high school kids, and he also led praise. So he was considered to be, both by like adults and his peers, he was considered to be like this great leader, just so talented in like music and art, and like has so much potential. And then everybody said about him that if he puts his mind to something, he can do it. And so he was one of those people that people were like jealous of, like adults loved him and praised him. And there was a lot of hopes and dreams for what Mike would become. But I was still young at the time, but from my point of view, he started kind of isolating himself, and then kind of getting into fights with people at church. So it was kind of because he used to be a very social, very friendly person who, if a new person came to church, he would be the one to welcome them, and just one of those people that you feel comfortable talking to. But then he started, the change was kind of gradual, but it was very obvious. And then so when he started changing that way, it was kind of strange. But from my point of view, I was just like, okay, I guess something is happening with him. I'm not sure. And then eventually he stopped coming out to church. And then there were some rumors about like what's happening with him, but I never knew that he had paranoid schizophrenia, and that's why, or that's what was happening to him. So I think from the parents' point of view, they had all these expectations of him because he's the first son and he was so talented and he has so much potential. And then all of a sudden, at the age of like 24 or something like that.
Yeah, around there, 23, 24, around
Right.
there.
Yeah. So that's when he became ill. And his mom was she was very insistent right away on him getting help. She wanted him to go to the doctors, but he actually didn't want to. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, like, I'm not sure how it is with other mentally ill people, but I've met many along the way ever since I got ill, and I suspect that it's very similar. But at first, when I got ill, I didn't think I was. I mean, I was in my room, like all the time, and my mom was totally concerned. But I myself, because it's you yourself, I didn't think it was that serious. I just thought, oh, I'm just kind of depressed here. I'm, kind of down. It actually took me about a good maybe 5, 6, 7 years living like that. And then before I finally one day realized, and only obliquely, if that makes any sense, like I realized, oh my gosh, there's actually is something maybe kind of wrong with me. It took me a while to figure it out that all is not right with me anymore, and yeah. And I remember my mom was like really concerned, and she was like going into my room all the time, and she kept asking me, let's go to a psychiatrist. And I thought that was like the most ridiculous thing. I was like, psychiatrist, I don't need that, but she kept just really imploring and just really begging. And so finally, after like some days of that, I decided to go. And I was thinking in my mind, oh, this is just ridiculous. And it's it's something that I just never imagined would ever possibly happen to me. You know what I mean? Kind of. And we went to the psychiatrist, and after talking to him for about an hour, he came up with the diagnosis that he believed that I have like a mild case of paranoid schizophrenia. Yeah, I didn't believe it, but my mom did. My parents did. My family did, but I did not for the longest time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, he says that his family believed him. So I think his mom did accept it pretty much right away. But I think his dad, because he still says to Mike things like, and, you know, also the fact that he's a pastor. So he'll a lot of times say things like, you know, if you just have faith, or exercise your will, you can get better. So I think he doesn't quite understand what paranoid schizophrenia is, or mental illness in general. But so I think for his parents, the main thing that I think like affected them culturally is that even though they did accept that he has an illness, they didn't tell anybody. So they didn't tell, even though obviously something was wrong, because there was such a, you know, like drastic change in Mike, and everybody saw it, and he was such a big part of the church. And he eventually stopped coming out at all. But his parents didn't tell any of the congregation that he had schizophrenia. Even, you know, the families that they were close to, they didn't tell them. So it was a secret. I think at most, did they tell them that you were like depressed, maybe?
Yeah, that's what they said. They told people, yeah, I have like a little depression, you know.
Yeah, depression, or like stressed out, a lot of stress. So, and I think a lot of that has to do with the culture, and also
Yeah.
being a pastor, because his pastor, the church was very kind of like a charismatic church, believing in like healing and things like that. So I think his father was afraid that, you know, church people would kind of wonder like, well, you know, can't you heal him, or like can God heal him, and things like that. So it was very much a secret. And I think at his house, you know, I don't know if you're familiar with you know, church and like pastoring families, but if you are, you know, the pastoring family, it's not just like working at church. You know, a lot of times like you invite people over to your house, and it's a very social, like welcoming kind of, you know, you have to be that kind of pastor, right? So they used to have people over at their house all the time. But since Mike got ill, they stopped all of that. So it was very obvious, I think, to everybody that something was wrong, but they didn't tell anybody. And I think part of it is that in the Korean culture, or in Korea, they don't, like, a lot of people don't even believe in mental illness. Like they don't understand that schizophrenia or things like that, like mental illnesses, are even real. So later on, when Mike and I told my mom, so we kept it a secret from her for a long time too, but when we told her, she didn't believe me, or she was like, what do you mean, like what do you mean, like he gets paranoid, right? There was lack of understanding. And so I think because of that, she was almost in denial. And then she's just said like, isn't he just depressed? And I try to explain what schizophrenia was, but she wasn't really accepting of it. So I think even to this day, she doesn't really understand what it is, or she kind of refuses to believe it. Because I think in their minds, you know, if you have something like that, if you have hallucinations or you're paranoid, you're just kind of dismissed as like, you're a crazy person. And then, you know, when she interacts with Mike, he doesn't fit that description of like a crazy person that she imagines. So I think that, yeah, there's like lack of understanding, and also therefore acceptance of that. But just to like continue with our story with, so I went on to college And then so I kind of forgot about like church, and I stopped going out to that church. So I went off to college. But I think I like met up with somebody, like a mutual friend, like somebody we both knew. And then he told me that Mike isn't doing well, and he's always isolating himself, and he doesn't talk to anybody. So I still didn't know that he had paranoid schizophrenia. But in college, I had really gotten into like this like Christian organization, or like a what do you call it? Like a Christian, like Grace on
Like
Campus.
a campus Christian organization.
Yeah, like a campus, like they would meet and have services and things like that. And so at the time, I was kind of in that mode where like I felt like I need to talk to everybody about like Christianity, and then almost like save them. So that was a period of my life. So then I contacted Mike saying, "Oh, you should come back out to church," and blah blah blah. So I wrote him this long letter, and then so that's how we reconnected. And then it kind of turned into like we started dating, and then later on we got married. But within that time of dating, obviously he was very paranoid. So sometimes he would push me away. Sometimes he would like leave me messages, like yelling at me, telling me to like leave him alone. And yeah, he's ashamed. No. And then he would always say this thing where he would say, what is that phrase you said?
I used to because when I first when I got ill initially, and I was pushing people away, not like literally, but like, you know what I mean. I was just kind of like, just get, I just want some distance. I used to say, let me go.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what I used to say.
So he
Yeah.
would say like, please let me go, please let me go. And that made no sense to me, but like he would leave me messages saying, please let me go. And then, but I fell in love with him. And so, and I knew him from before, when he was, when he had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. So I knew the Mike from before, so I knew that he was still in there somewhere. And then it wasn't like he was always always yelling at me. Um, Obviously there were good times too. So I really wanted to say, so I kind of kind of dealt with it, I guess, and then just stayed. But obviously it was a really dark time for me, because eventually not only was he paranoid of other people, like his paranoia, I feel like did get worse. Like when I first met him, um, some of the things that I saw were like he would like go off on like clerks and people like that. But when we started dating, he would get paranoid that like people were trying to take me away from him. So then he got paranoid about that. So then he would like often yell at people who he thought was flirting with me, or like even talking to me, giving me special attention. So kind of imagine like a jealous boyfriend times 10 with paranoia.
Like a crazy,
Yeah.
paranoid, jealous boyfriend. Yeah.
So I think I mean that was really hard for me. And at a certain point, he also got paranoid of me. So I think that was the hardest for me. So because in my mind, it's like, okay, if you're paranoid of other people, I can deal with that. But if you're paranoid that I'm against you and I'm one of these people, because he believes in these people who are following him around, spying on him, I didn't really feel like I could deal with that. And so looking back in retrospect, I was very much depressed. And as I was saying, I think my family is that classic example of Korean Korean Americans or Koreans who, like, my parents have never encouraged me to talk about my feelings or my emotions. My parents never talk about their emotions. I've never seen my parents be affectionate to each other, like not even like holding hands or like loving, like staring into each other's eyes with love or anything like that. So I grew up with very much, just with holding in all of my emotions. And if I cried, I would just cry in my room. And you know, it wasn't normal growing up for me to talk about what I was going through or difficult times that I was going through. So I never, ever, you know, I did tell my closest friends about Mike's illness, that he has paranoid schizophrenia, but I would never get into details about it. Um, I never thought of like seeking help for myself. That never even occurred to me. It's only like later on when we came out with our story that I realized there's like so much help out there. But at the time, it didn't even occur to me to reach out to anybody or like a therapist, anything like that. So I just remember being so miserable and depressed, and like my only outlet was I would pray, and then sometimes it would turn into anger, and I would be like, you know, asking God like why, and you know, why do we deserve this? And I would actually, the depression became so bad that I was too afraid to end my own life, but I would think about suicide a lot, because in my mind the best solution would be for us to die together, like get into a car accident and then die at the same time, like Mike and I thought that that would be like the best thing that could happen, because I was so miserable and he was paranoid, and what's the point? So like before every meal, that was actually my prayer, that I was too afraid to end my own life, but please, like kill us in a car accident or something like that, so we would both die at the same time. Um so that, like when I think about that now, it's just such a it's so heartbreaking, because it's like I could have, if I if I had known, I could have gotten help, like therapy. And you know, he wasn't going out to therapy either, and I think he could have, I could have talked to his parents, because his parents are, I feel like, more than my parents, they're more open to talk about your emotions, and they're more affectionate. But I just, yeah, I just wasn't taught to do that. I would never, you know, I would feel like I'm being a burden.
And so that's kind of the part of the reason also why like, you know, because I really believe in my after joining like organizations such as this one, you know, and like just getting help, you know, like it's, I think it would have gotten easier for me had I done it sooner, you know. And so that's kind of what we're doing here. You know, we want to help. You know, we want to like just like, you know, I wish I want to be a helpful person to somebody. To be the person that I wish someone had been for me. No, because nobody had really helped. Yeah, I was seeing psychiatrists and I was pushing people away, but what I don't think anyone really understood was that I was screaming for help, you know, that's what I was actually really doing. And so yeah, we want to help. Yeah, that's our heart in doing all this.
Yeah. And then I think, so eventually we got married and everything. And but still, even after we got married, we hadn't told my family that he had paranoid schizophrenia. I was just too afraid of like what they would think, like how, you know, they're gonna look down on us or judge. And because he was already getting a lot of, you know, my parents obviously weren't happy that he didn't have a stable job. He would have like a job here and there, but he could never keep them. So I think just being afraid of, oh, if we told him he had schizophrenia, it's going to be even much worse. And even with my friends, I think that was like my biggest insecurity, and like the shame it came from that. Like, because my friends, I have Asian friends, they're not Korean, but my closest friends are Asian, and they all married, you know, successful men, that who could take care of them. But I think for me, I just always felt like, oh, like I just felt like they were judging me. You know, they probably weren't, or maybe they were, but I think even if they were, it's not like, later on what I realized is that it's not really their fault, because I would never talk about it. So I think I came to the realization that if I don't talk about it, how would they understand? But eventually, so I think the reason why it was so up and down and it was so difficult, one of the biggest reasons was because Mike was not taking the medication consistently. So he refused, and maybe a lot of you guys can relate or know, but he hated the side effects. So you want to talk about the?
Yeah, like I'm not sure if you guys don't like, okay, the side effects are like terrible. It's kind of like there's weight gain. There's like I have a difficult time. You have a difficult time driving, or at least I do, or just doing just like basic things. And so my it finally got to a point. There's also impotence too. And it finally got to a point where I was talking to my psychiatrist, and he was telling me that he understood. He knows that it's like that. He knows that the side effects of the medication can be extremely bad, maybe even just as bad as the symptoms of the illness too. And so like he told me that it's kind of on me. He said that it's what I can live with. So like if I feel like I need to take the medication more than to do so, but if I feel like the side effects of the medication are like just overwhelmingly bad, then I should stop, or I should maybe take a break from them. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
It's horrible.
Yeah,
It's
but
horrible.
it's kind of like this. Yeah, but that's what he was saying. That's the last thing he said to me that when I talked to him. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was very, because it was like a cycle where and obviously part of it was that he didn't think he was ill. So then it was a cycle where he would take the medication for a time and then he would feel better. Like he would start taking it when things got really bad, and even in his mind, I would be crying all the time, and he could see that I was having such a hard time, so he would finally be like, okay, I'll take the medication. And then he would take it for a while, and then he would feel better, and he would be like, oh, I don't need it anymore. So it was that whole cycle, and then he would stop taking it. And then there was also many times when he was telling me that he was taking the medication, but then I realized this one time that he was like crushing the medication and then basically like going like this and then going, and then that was, he could, so that I think it was so that he could tell me that he took it, because technically he did, but he basically like took the crushed pill and then kind of like put it on his tongue, and then he could tell me that he took the medication. So that's what he was doing. But the reason why he eventually, like maybe like 4 years ago now, he started taking the medication consistently on his own, or more consistently than before, is that he, like, he couldn't stand the voices. Like the voices were getting worse.
And I couldn't do it. Just couldn't do it to you anymore. Like, it's the sight of her crying because I'm like not, because I am like willfully trying to just get well on my own, or I just detest the medication that much. Like it became like a choice in my mind, like, am I gonna make Seol happy here, or am I gonna make myself happy? You know what I mean? And I just couldn't live with the decision it had, to see her cry continually, and so like I started taking it every day, yeah, because of that too.
Yeah, so when he did that, he finally stabilized enough to kind of start functioning in society, I guess, and see, because he's actually, like, if you knew Mike before he became paranoid, he's a very social person. He's a complete extrovert. I'm actually introvert. He's extrovert. So even when he was not taking the medication regularly and he was very paranoid, like when we would just be outside, like in line or something, he's the type of person who will like start conversation with the person in front of him, like in line, and I'd be like, why are you talking to him? Like, because I'm just very antisocial and very much an introvert. So when he started taking the medication and stabilizing, life became bearable, and he started pretty much right away seeking social interaction. So obviously he still wanted to be a comic book artist, so he joined this comic book group that meets comic book, like aspiring comic book writers and artists that meet every Wednesday at this comic book store. Yeah. So then he kind of got plugged in there. And then they were doing like they were putting together like an anthology, and then so he was like, oh, he turned to me because I've always wanted to be a writer. I'm like a failed writer. But he turned to me and he said, oh, they're putting together an anthology and they want artists to submit. Can you write something for us? Just something, for that I can draw and submit. And then the theme was something like, what was it? What was the theme?
Well, yeah, the anthology theme was twisted romance or something
Twisted
like
romance
that.
or dark something like that. And then I was like, oh, that's perfect. I can just write about our life. And then so I wrote a little something about, his schizophrenia and our relationship surrounding that. And then he submitted it. But then the anthology just kind of fell apart and never happened. So we were like, oh, why don't we just like publish it ourselves? So then we just sent it into the publisher, and then we printer. Yeah, to the to a printer. It's just self-published, indie comics. And then so we got it. And then I realized at that time, because we were gonna like actually start going to comic book conventions and start selling them. So we were like, okay, so we're coming out with our story, and we still haven't told my parents or my mom or my family that he has paranoid schizophrenia. I don't want them to read this comic book and that's how they find out, like, well, what? With everybody else. So that's when I told my mom, like I went up to my mom and I told her, and she was more accepting than I thought she would be. It was almost like anticlimactic. I thought she'd be like, what? But maybe because she didn't even quite believe me. And also, it was obvious that something was wrong. So it wasn't like a total shock. So that's how we came out to her. And then once we started going to comic book conventions and selling these comic books, and obviously we would have to like pitch the comic book, like what it's about, to people like passing by. And then it was just, we were so shocked by how many people, when we told them what the comic book was about, they would say, oh, like I know somebody with bipolar or schizophrenia, or oh, I have depression, or I know somebody who does. It was just so shocking to us how many people. And then even within that comic book group, a few of them, like one of them emailed us and told us like, oh, I have this, but I'm keeping it a secret. So there were so many people like coming out to us, and it was so, we were like, oh my gosh, like there's so many people and just nobody talks about it. Like it's a secret. Everybody wants to keep it a secret, or it's, and I think that's when we started getting connected to people like Naomi, people who want to spread awareness or work in the mental health field. And that's when, and that was only like 3-4 years ago. So that's when we realized there is help out there. There's so many people who want to help, and organizations like, like Share, or so I think we kind of veered off from the whole cultural aspect, but yeah. And I think, it is, yeah, I think in the Asian culture, it is harder for us to talk about it. But we heard so many other people from other cultures saying the same thing. So I say in one of the comic books, because I always like write an afterword for them, we heard like an African American man saying, they're expected to be like these tough men, right? So they can't talk about depression or having some kind of mental illness. And just many other cultures too, they say the same thing. But I think that in the Korean Asian culture, it is maybe more extreme, that we're not supposed to burden anybody, talk about our emotions. There's that whole aspect of don't bring shame to the family. And having a mental illness, you know, to Korean people, it is a shame. And not just mental illness, but I heard even, you know, like autism and things like that for children, they'd rather not talk about it, pretend like everything's okay. And I just think that it's time that, because to me, it's kind of, I think when somebody has an illness, it's kind of obvious. I mean, with something like paranoid schizophrenia, I think things like depression, you can hide it pretty well. And that becomes a problem too. But yeah, I think it's time that more people talk about it, because that's how I think we can break the stigma. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Linda, and I will be facilitating the conversation after this 5-minute break. By now, you guys have probably found the reaction button on the bottom of the screen. I would say let's give them a round of applause, but you can also just do whatever you want to do to give praise and recognition to this very moving story. And we will be back in 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Seol.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much, Seol and Mike. That was so amazing to hear your story, and I so admire your courage in speaking up and the message that you've carried to people who are suffering in silence and afraid or don't even know that they could say something, that they could ask for help. You know, I think the people like you really breaking new ground and helping to create a safe space for people to come forward and ask for help and get real help. You know, it is out there, and that's such a hopeful and encouraging message. You know.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I think, yeah, so many people say that to us, right? Like, yeah, I see your comments, and they thank us for being vulnerable and brave, and for sharing our story. But I think, yeah, I just want you guys to know that sharing our story really helps us to, yeah, because it's something that we've been holding in for such a long time. It's really freeing to be able to share our story, and also just the fact that, oh, maybe we're helping somebody. I think that's such a privilege, because we've been to like a group, you know, of parents talking about their children with schizophrenia. And then when we heard their stories, it was just so heartbreaking. And then we feel like we're in a pretty good place now. Not that things are perfect, but obviously things are just is still difficult. But these parents were talking about like such heartbreaking things. And then that made me realize like it's such a privilege that we get to tell our stories, because those parents are so, they're just barely surviving every day, that they will never get to tell their stories. They will, yeah, it's, so we think of it as, oh, we get to tell our story, and you know, and people call us brave and all these things, but there are these people who will never get to tell their stories. They're just trying to survive each day. So yeah, thank you for this opportunity.
Seol and Mike, I was just wondering 2 things. One, I think it'd be wonderful. I mean, I don't know how skilled you guys are at doing the whole Zoom thing. I am not. But if we could share a couple of slides of his artwork, or your, what are those called? Those boards, when you guys do the idea boards or whatever. Storyboards. Thank you. And also, I wouldn't, you know, if if I can, I wouldn't mind, I would like to do a plug so people can order your books.
So if you want, I could share the screen. They have a website. Sol, would you like me to share
Sure.
your
Okay.
web page? And I don't know if you want to talk about
Oh,
it.
there you go. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe this is a good time when they're coming back from break to see all
So
this.
Mike and Soul Comics, and I'm going to put that link in the chat in case people want to grab it.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we have 5 issues. So we were putting them out one issue at a time because it took him a long time, and it wasn't like we are self-publishing, so it's not like we had a deadline. We set our own deadline. Sometimes he would have a really hard time because he's drawn like this for example is a scene of him
Fine.
Getting taken to the mental ward.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. I just noticed the handcuffs. So that's
Yeah.
yeah.
Painful to draw. Really painful.
Yeah, so then sometimes he would have to like take a long break after he drew something like this. So it took us a long time. But now the 5-issue series is complete. So all the 5 issues are there. Oh, thank you. It's actually because he's on medication, so then he's very self-conscious about his artwork. Because obviously, like when you're on medication, you're not like you can't do anything at your highest capacity, I think.
I tell you what, if this is him at his not highest, I'm very impressed. I'm seriously, I mean, to tell this, I mean, this kind of, it's a raw, vulnerable story, and it's, yeah, the use of just ink and paper.
Oh,
You know,
thank you.
did you think about using colors or not?
Yes, we're in the process of coloring it right now. We have the first issue in color, and I'm like working on the rest of the 4 issues, coloring them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me get back to the general audience because I think they're probably interested in hearing all this. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Okay. So my name is Linda Chong, and I am proud to say I am a co-facilitator for support groups, and I'm also kind of a co-educator support. I lead things with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the San Gabriel Valley, and I am honored to be here today and to hear the story of this remarkable young couple. What we were talking about before you guys came back from break was what, the pudding, what's the proof in the pudding? We wanted to showcase Mike's work. So Libby, would you let it roll again, please?
Want me to show again? Yeah, absolutely. Let's see.
So most of them, Mike, you were saying most of them are black and white, but you're doing a color one?
Yeah, it's a 5-issue series, and the first issue we finished coloring it, but like there's 4 issues left that I'm still working on. It'll probably I figured it'll probably take me maybe at least 6 months to a year more to finish coloring the whole thing. At which point what we want to do is to put the whole thing together into like just one graphic novel. Yeah, that's what we're hoping, and then we'll just kind of see what happens from there.
Okay, thank you. And tell us a little bit about what we're looking at.
Oh, this
That's
scene,
him, right?
yeah. So
Portrait.
I think this is the issue where we talk about how when he started taking the medication more consistently for me, like for his family. But now we're giving him kind of a hard time because he can't like when he's really heavily on the medication, he can't really think clearly. So then he can't really hold a conversation. He's not doing much. He's mostly sleeping. He's gaining a lot of weight. And then I don't know if you guys know, but in the Korean culture, gaining weight, like we talk about like having to be successful academically, but it's not just that. Like we are expected to be almost perfect, like in appearance. And so when he gains a lot of weight, his parents will give him a hard time. So he gains a lot of weight on it. So this is us, I think, on our anniversary, and then we're sitting at a restaurant, and then I'm asking him, basically like trying to hold a conversation with him, but his mind is foggy, so he can't really, say. Like, I'm asking him, like, say something interesting. It's our anniversary, and then he says, no, I just, my mind is blank or very fuzzy. And then at the end, I'm kind of blowing up and saying, like, the medication is your excuse for everything. And it's just, I mean, sometimes it feels like that, because I think even though I understand the illness a lot better, still for me, like, sometimes I get so frustrated. I'm like, what are you doing? How come you're not doing anything? Like, do something, like productive, or like, you have an excuse for everything. I have to do everything around the house. And so this is just one of the scenes where I'm like blowing up at him, like losing my patience.
So, Seol, do you have access? Oh, that's beautiful. That's the cover.
Oh, that's what
Uh,
is it?
yeah, this is a cover for the issue number 5, like an alternate cover that was done by a good friend named Don Walker. He's actually a professional comic book artist, and yeah, he's great. His
Wow.
artwork is beautiful. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Two things. First of all, Libby's probably going to include a link or something if anyone would like to buy copies of your comic book. But you're doing this all on your own, right? It's self-published. Is this on like newsprint or anything, or is it just regular white paper, and or
Yeah,
is it
it's
downloadable or what?
um
Yeah.
we it's not a newsprint. It's just printed on regular paper.
Like white
Yeah,
paper.
just white.
Okay, so it's a
Yeah.
regular 8x10 sheet of paper.
Yeah, I
Is it
guess
8
so.
by 10?
Here's like a picture of it. I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. What I wanted to ask your wife is, do you have a support group that you belong to yourself? I mean, it is kind of, I mean, props to you. Your devotion to your husband is laudable, but you were saying earlier that you found yourself falling into a depression yourself.
Right.
And there's knowing the biology is what's behind this, and there's also your feelings of, you know, some of the feelings being expressed on the strip here. Have you sought out help for yourself too?
Yes. I was getting therapy for a while. I just I didn't really like her though. Or like we didn't like, I felt like she didn't really understand me because she wasn't Asian American. So but it still helped. I was amazed by just being able to talk about my feelings and the things that were happening in my life, and just her giving me advice from more like an objective person's point of view. It was very helpful, but there's just certain things that I felt like she didn't understand because of the culture. So I wanted to get a new therapist. And then we moved too, so it became kind of too far. So I stopped seeing her, and then the coronavirus hit, and then I just never, yeah.
I got you. But I mean, I think you both are smart people. I think it goes without saying that taking care of yourselves independently of you guys as a unit is very important, because you guys are together for the long haul. Um, Actually, so you bring up a good point. I think it kind of dovetails well into the mission of 1,000 Cranes. Um, I think even for myself, my background's Chinese, but um, similar in that it's a Confucian influenced Asian culture, right? So I know about guilt and shame being, instruments that are used to sway people's behavior and all. And I know about conformity and about group, how the group is more important, a collective society, than the individual. But I find myself, when I go and see a new therapist, I find myself having to educate them.
Mm.
And then it's like, it gets a little frustrating, because then you're not really healing during that time. I don't mind doing a little bit of it just to kind of get up to speed. I don't expect everyone, like if I ever became a therapist, I wouldn't profess to know what someone from Eritrea necessarily goes through, but I would read a book about Eritrea and the civil war there and everything. But tell me about that a little bit in your both respective opinions. I know that, for instance, Mike's father being a pastor, I think a lot of people do kind of feel like, oh, I don't know, it's a little better than superstition, but a lot of people do kind of think, well, gee, if we just pray our way, you know, that's why you had, you know, back in the days of like the tent revivals, right? How did, was that something that, I mean, has your father, what has his response been in general to like the publication of the comic book and also to your condition?
Yeah, my dad, that's a good question, and it's complicated because he's a pastor, but he's also my dad too, you know, and so he kind of, I guess, has two roles, like as a pastor and as a father toward me, and he's you know, to be honest with you guys, I don't think he's entirely accepting of kind of like Soul's mom, where when she told her mom that like I have a mental illness, her mom kind of was a little bit not understanding or not really, maybe not really believing what she's saying, you know. And it's my dad sort of is like that too, where he I don't think he actually really understands that mental illness is like this, you know, it's like breaking your arm, you know, or something like that, right? It's the same kind of thing, right? There's something wrong with, something happens to your brain, you know, and I don't think he sees that, you know, and if coming from a Christian pastor's point of view, you know, he has advised me a lot that he thinks that it's just kind of like a spiritual thing, you know, and that maybe it's like more than it is like some kind of something wrong with my brain, my actual brain, and
Or with your faith not being strong enough or something, right?
yeah, well,
That's not just a Korean thing, though. I mean, I think a lot of
yeah,
people, you know,
right.
people who are very devout, one way or another, believe that that's the way to kind of supplicate oneself to the spiritual world. But I wanted to actually talk a little bit about that. I think there's a lot of research out there that shows that a lot of times mental illness is a response to some type of trauma. Of course, some of it is just a genetic vulnerability, but so for myself, I read an excellent book. I wonder if you guys have heard of it. There's no drawings in it, but it's called Comfort Women by Nora Okja Keller.
I've heard of it. I don't think I read it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
get your Kleenex out. It's pretty, yeah. But basically, her mother was a comfort woman. And for those of you in the audience who aren't aware of what that is, a comfort woman was basically someone that the Japanese Imperial Army used for sex during their rest and relaxation time. And it was basically a form of slavery. But when Nora's mom, I mean, it's basically her story, but I don't remember the character's name now, would go into her her fugues or her episodes. They first started by seeking out shamans. And I know you guys are Christians, but has anyone ever talked to you guys about that? Shamans are, you know, more of a folk-based approach in East Asian culture. Was that something you guys?
With shamans?
Yeah, was that anyone ever talked about?
Oh no, but yeah, it would be more like healing pastors, like pastors who can heal and things like that, but not specific.
But we have heard, I have heard anyway, a little bit about shamanism. I mean, it is part of Asian culture too, right? There definitely is that it's there, and but we don't really have any experience, like, you know what I mean? Yeah, with that, in terms of dealing with the mental illness and stuff. Yeah, but have heard of it though. Yeah.
So I also wanted to talk a little bit about every now and again, Seoul would kind of, I suppose because you kind of came mid-childhood to the United States, but you kind of use Korean and then Korean American interchangeably. But I caught the fact that you sometimes you would catch yourself and you knew when to use the correct number. But there is a difference, right?
Yes.
Between someone who grew up in Gangnam versus someone who grew up in, you know, Hacienda Heights here or something.
Yeah. Actually,
I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, that's something, yeah, because I mean, I don't like to read off a script. I just get so frustrated trying to write out a whole script. But I did have notes, and that's one of the things that I kind of forgot to talk about, because I did want to talk about that. Yeah, because I do feel like it's important to, I mean, I think being a child of first generation immigrants has its own culture. So yeah, I consider myself to be Korean American. And I think there's a lot of like, we come to the United States, like I came at when I was 9, 10. And I know that in Korea, there's a lot of pressure to be, you know, successful, be good at everything, like play many instruments and tutors and all of this. But when we come to the United States, I feel like there's that added pressure of, okay, now we don't speak the language, but the pressure doesn't go away. I feel like it's maybe a little bit more, because now you're expected to learn the language so you can help your parents translate and still get straight A's, and just all of these pressures. And I feel like for us children, then we're also seeing the American culture, and then seeing how different it is. And I think that we can become kind of resentful, because we see that, oh, the American parents are so like affectionate, and you know, asking their children what they want, because in the Korean culture it's more like, oh, the parents tell you what to do and you just do it, you don't question it.
You're
And
basically being raised Korean in the United States.
right.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to know about was I mean, this is North America, but this terrific sitcom called Kim's Convenience, for instance, and the church plays a big role. And in fact, the guy who wrote Kim's Convenience said it was kind of autobiographical. Would you say that the church and church life plays a bigger role in, I guess, the social fabric of everything, and helping people assimilate, people, you know, helping them find resources and everything, than it would if you were actually in Korea?
Yeah, because I mean, I think it's just different, because in Korea too, like, church was huge in my life. But I think in America, like his dad helps a lot of, or he's retired now, but he used to help a lot of like his congregation with like documents and things like that, like translating. Like once he learned the language, he would go with them to like different places and help them translate and fill out applications and things like that. So
It's kind of a social worker too.
right, yeah, like that, yeah, helping them to like navigate this new country.
It sounds like your dad is he's still alive, right?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah,
Retired.
Yeah, he's sounds like a real asset to the community here in LA or Southern California. But what I was starting to ask about was going back to the topic of what life is like, say, in Korea, 2021 Korea. Do you think that I assume you go back periodically still, or no?
Actually, we haven't. Yeah, I haven't gone back since like 1999, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have Netflix?
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen the show It's Okay Not to Be Okay?
No.
Okay, well, that's another title I guess I can drop in the chat box, but it is a K-drama, and you know they're all really popular right now because all the people are like impossibly good looking, the men and the women both, and they're all well dressed and
Plastic
everything.
surgery.
Yeah. But anyway, it actually addresses mental health.
Mm.
And a good part of it, the lead is Kim Soo Hyun, and he has a brother who has autism, but then they basically have to raise each other because of something traumatic that happened in their childhoods. But anyway, the reason why I'm bringing it up, the reason why that show was so popular is because it kind of broke things down in a way, not only for Koreans in Korea to start talking about this, but for even Korean Americans to kind of like say, oh, so this is what a mental hospital in, along the coast of Korea looks like. And so, yeah, I mean, I wanted to talk about that. And what about,
Linda, I have a question that I was hoping you might be able to address, or maybe you could reframe it. You spoke a little bit earlier about how in Confucian tradition, there's value placed on responsibilities to the group more than responsibilities to the individuals. Could you talk a little bit about what that means for those of us that aren't as familiar with that concept?
okay, well, let me back it up a little bit. The way the Greco-Roman culture really permeated Europe and European thinking about philosophy, about democracy, even about the creation of an alphabet. That's kind of what, without overstating things, it kind of, ancient China had that effect on the eastern parts of its unofficial empire. So if you were an educated person, you read Chinese. If you're in Japan, if you were Korea. And in fact, I forgot what the name was it King Sejong, who created the Korean alphabet. But Korea has an alphabet now, but a lot of it still is based on it still includes Chinese characters. So my point is, it's a very intellectual, I don't like to call it religion, but it's a very intellectual way of thinking, this Confucian way. And it basically, it served society well. It rewards you for basically being self-disciplined, diligent, clean. I mean, and it's because Confucius was, I'm going to be a little glib here, but basically he was employed by the emperor to come up with a philosophy. So it's going to serve the people that he wants served. So in East Asian cultures, I'm not going to address like, Pakistan and India, you yourself are less important. It's like, and actually even like Muslim cultures, they do this kind of the same thing. I would be Linda, the daughter of so-and-so. And then so-and-so is the son of so-and-so. So your place, or I'm also the mother of so-and-so. So your place in society is very much revered. Your name and who you are as an individual, less so. Does that make sense, Libby?
It does, absolutely. And I'm just wondering, in American culture where people are encouraged to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and to be individuals and uniqueness is highly valued. I'm just wondering how that might affect Asian Americans as they search for a healing path and as they try and cope with mental health issues and issues in their families, balancing the need to take care of themselves with responsibilities to the family. It just seems like that would be a balancing act.
Well, thank goodness Mike and Seol are creatives and they have that outlet. Because that means society can benefit from your talents. Yeah, the whole idea of being an individual, it's not a bad thing, but to an extent. And so when I say to an extent, it means to the extent that you stay in your lane, you don't embarrass the family. What about Mike and Seol? What do you guys? What's your take on that? I'm supposed to be moderating, and you guys will be talking. What
No.
you thought about that?
Like being individuals.
Yeah, what Libby said.
I think I do feel like in America, like as Asian Americans, it's a little bit more accepted. For example, when we were talking about Mike and how, yeah, his parents wanted him to become a doctor. And when he was young, you know, all he would do is draw if it were his choice, but his mom would always want him to get better at math. And even like she has a granddaughter now, and then she's not very good at math. And then she even talks about his mom still also talks about that. Like she's not good at math, and she's sad about that. But once he showed talent in art, and he was actually able to get into a good art school, they were okay with it. So I think for them it's like, oh, as long as you can succeed in that area and really make money and still be able to take care of us when we're older, because his parents went really far too, because the art center is really expensive, so they sold their house so that he can go there. And then he got diagnosed with schizophrenia, so he dropped out, and
It's just a mess.
yeah,
just
he eventually graduated though.
Yeah,
like in
it-
like
Oh,
10 not from art school, but from Cal State Long Beach in art illustration. But it took him like 10 years or something like
yeah,
that.
I was ill at
Yeah.
that point, and like yeah, it was just I will say that it's something when I got mentally ill, it's something that I never thought would have happened, and like after it happened, it just completely changed and derailed my whole life. Yeah, that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, but the expectation is that, yeah, even though he's ill, he's still the one, like he has a younger brother and a sister, but he's still the one who's expected to take care of his parents when they get old, like too old to take care of themselves. So yeah, I think individualism, I mean, as long as you can still
yeah.
become successful. And
But the good news, if I may, is that because of his father's, I guess, paying it forward to all these other people, to his flock, he kind of has an extended family, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
there's still,
So that's
the
kind
people
of, yeah, that's kind of reassuring.
Mhm.
And as for like I read your essay, Seol, and you said there are some bad days still, but and you wrote something like, oh well, that the mental illness cost Mike so many aspects of his life, or so many years of his life, but he's still a relatively young man. What else? What other goals do you guys have?
I mean, I'm a school teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and so like the out of order is something we do, like for me on the side, but we would really like for it to get published, like really get published, and so that we can get our story out there. And that's actually our goal. Yeah. And then for us to do more talks like this, with raising awareness and things like that. So right now that's what we want to do.
Okay. I see we have a question from. Sorry, if can someone mute themselves? There's a lot of background noise or feedback. But I see I have a question here from Jesse R. Would you kindly unmute and ask your question?
It's okay. So, do you all have a publisher in mind, or do you?
No.
Yeah, not well. It would be great if we could like get published by like a legitimate comic book company, like Top Shelf or Image or any of those. But like we don't. I mean, any would be okay. Any.
Come on.
I wrote am I echoey? I wrote about, I'm echoey?
Yeah, but that's okay. Go ahead and ask your question.
Hold on. Oh my.
It's okay. Go ahead. If the aunts
Okay,
don't,
yeah.
if the aunts don't mind the echoing, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I took it off. I didn't like it. So I wrote a book and it's for sale on Amazon. And I actually have a publisher that's working with me to do my second book. And she is actually spiritual. Her name is Kaisha. If I can put, or you can, if you don't mind sharing your info, I can definitely check in with her and see what she feels about it, what she thinks about it. I definitely feel like everybody's where they're supposed to be. There's no coincidences. And I definitely wouldn't mind reaching out to her and seeing where we can take you all with this. She's amazing. She's super sweet and just,
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, we'll send you our information. I guess we can direct message you here from. Yeah, so we'll maybe like give you our email address or something like that.
So I see that Ryan Ribueno has a question. Ryan, do you want to ask your question?
Oh, hi. Have you lost any friends or family after coming out with life
Oh.
challenges? And
Yeah.
how did you
Oh,
react?
after we
What was your response after their response?
Well, when I got ill, I lost almost all my friends, and after we came out, there was no friends
To
left to
lose.
lose. Yeah,
Aw.
in my case, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think I mean, yeah. So that's like his biggest desire is to make friends because he was such a
Yeah.
social person and he had a lot of friends before. So yeah, I guess like he did lose most of his friends when he became ill. But part of it is that he was pushing them away.
Yeah.
Like they would try to, communicate with him and know what's wrong or like there was one friend who kept coming by to the house,
Yeah.
but then he was the one pushing them away. And like life happens and they have to move on. So I think they just kind of, yeah. So by the time that we came out, I mean, he still has friends from like high school, but more like just communicating on social media and things like that. But I guess not like really close friends. I think for coming out for us was actually pretty surprising. It wasn't like a lot of people were more accepting than not. And I think it's because
I think they already kind of knew.
yeah, I think they knew something was wrong and it's not like it had just happened and then we came out. It was just something that was going on for a long, long time and it was just us just coming out and saying it, but they already knew. Yeah.
So Naomi, Mrs. Shima has a question. She asked, does Mike's parents still think he is going to get well enough to take over the family business?
No, the reason why I was asking that is because I understand that most schizophrenia is not going away, and it's a lifetime, type of disease. So you have to learn to manage it, I guess, or live with it. So I was just wondering, how can you, I mean, do they, if they're expecting that, then how would you do that? Or is that something that you can do, I guess?
Well, that's a good question too. And because I came down with a mental illness, there's kind of like this, because in the church, as a pastor, you're supposed to be like sort of like the example, right? You're supposed to be kind of like like someone who like leads by example, and having a mental illness really kind of is problematic, and when it deals with that, and so the only way that I would actually ever become a pastor, I think, is if I actually got well, and so that's what I'm actually kind of really hoping that hopefully might happen in the future. But if it doesn't, it's okay too,
He wants
yeah,
to. I mean, yeah, he wants to become more like a praise leader, like
Yeah.
praise
Yeah.
pastor still. Yeah.
He plays an instrument or sings or something, or both.
Yeah.
He sings. He can play guitar a little bit, but mostly he loves to sing.
Actually, I was going to kind of, following up on that. Oh, Pamela Nava asked what's a praise pastor. A praise pastor, basically they're also called praise leaders. They're usually the people who, in the churches where they do more contemporary worship. I mean, not when everyone stands up and there's a hymnal book, but you guys are chuckling because you know what I mean. But a lot of churches have changed with the times, and they'll have basically like a soft rock band in the background, drums and everything. So that's what a praise pastor would do, or a praise leader would do. But I think you guys probably know this, but I would think even some of the big, I wouldn't call them mega churches, but the Korean community here in Los Angeles has quite a few big churches. Are there any with a special needs ministry? And would you consider either tapping into that, or, I mean, you don't have to, I'm just curious. No?
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, not that I know of.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, though. Yeah.
Because then that would be your platform to talk about, hey, I can be both. I could be a believer, and I believe in modern science and stuff.
Right.
Okay, well, that's food for thought, but
it's a really good idea.
Runmai Gujar, I'm sorry if I'm mangling your name. You had a question? Hello?
It's hard to hear you. Do you want to type your question, Mirangi? Maybe type it in the chat so we can.
We've only got a few minutes left for this Q&A, but is there anyone else here? If anyone else wants to raise their hands.
I have a question, Linda.
Go ahead.
Mike, you've described how when you were really struggling, you were pushing people away, which is something that often happens when peer specialists are reaching out and trying to offer support. Do you have any specific suggestions or ideas about how a peer specialist could continue to offer support, even if an Asian American person struggling with mental health issues is pushing them away or pushing other people away? What should peer specialists keep in mind in order to keep sort of a connection going?
I think what would have helped me is if someone had, because like I was pushing Seol away too.
Where'd it go?
Hello?
Oh, sorry.
What happened? Oh, sorry.
I clicked on one of them.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was pushing everybody away, including Seol, when she first started to try to talk to me, but she just kept trying, just gently kept trying, and I was pushing people away in my mind because of, as an Asian American guy, there's like shame, right, associated with, I didn't want to have to deal with that, or there's embarrassment, bringing shame to the family, that kind of thing, all that kind of stuff. And for all those reasons, I didn't want to burden her, and I didn't want to burden people either, with my, talk and stuff. And but she just kept trying, and that's something that really, it kind of like touched my heart, and when I realized that she just was trying to do something good for me, and it wasn't like she wanted something in return, or like, and that's what did it. That's what actually helped in the end for me. So I guess that's what I would suggest is like, just to maybe occasionally just keep trying, just like to call or text the person, or not like bombard them. I mean, but like just kind of, you know what I mean? Yeah, just like continually. Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, and patient and persistent, and it worked on me. That's what did that.
Yeah, one of the things that he says that I always always like makes me want to cry is he would say that he didn't know, because at the time when he was pushing everybody away and isolating himself, I think he got so used to that he said he thought he liked it, like he wants to be alone. But he said that when I came into his life, or came back into his life later, that he it's only then that he realized how lonely he was. Yeah, so he hadn't realized how lonely he was until I came back into his life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that we, obviously, I think we can't really blame his friends, for example. Like some of them did really try and they kept coming back and he kept pushing them away. But I think that it's good to remember that, even like everybody, like all of us, we're social creatures. And even I think deep in people's illness, they recognize it when you're trying to, connect with them and keep trying, just letting them know that you're there.
I have a question from Ranmai Gujar that she wrote in the chat. I think this is for Seol. What were your expectations from your in-laws and extended family as a daughter-in-law?
From as a daughter-in-law?
Like my parents.
Oh, okay.
How did you cope with certain situations during festivals? I'm not sure what the second part, but it's her question.
I think
my parents see Seol to this day as like sort of like this like super savior, kind of like, you know what I mean? Yeah, as the way they see her.
I feel like
I was mentally ill. There's no way I can get married. That's what I thought too, and until she just kind of came back into my life, and
but I think one of the expectations that I am not meeting for them, because yeah, they are very, I think they always express gratitude with me for helping Mike and coming into his life. But one thing is that they really, like I mentioned before, because he's the first son, he's expected to have a son to carry and then especially because he does have a brother who can also do that. But okay, this is gonna sound really maybe racist, but he didn't marry a Korean girl, so the child wouldn't be completely like fully Korean. So they really want a full Korean son to carry down the name, and we're not gonna give that to them, and because we decided not to have children for many reasons. One of them being that it's really personal, but I don't mind sharing. Like we just like I really feel like I'm okay with taking care of Mike and being like a caretaker. But I think if we had children, honestly, I might become resentful toward him, because I would feel like I'm taking care of him and I'm gonna have to take care of the children, and I have a full-time job, and I think that I really don't want to become resentful of Mike. And so and there are many other reasons, like reasons like completely unrelated to his illness, that we decided not to have children. But that's one big expectation. And just the other day, he had his mom on the speakerphone, and she was saying, she didn't know I could hear her, but she was saying that she's gonna have a talk with me about having children. I just turned 40. We're not gonna have children. Yeah.
How long have you been married?
We've been married 13 years.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, you have a lot of supporters and a lot of very kind remarks in the chat box. I think Penny was saying, yeah, you guys are a ministry in and of itself. Some other people were talking about perhaps banding together as fellow artists who are, dealing with mental health challenges. So go ahead and take your time perusing the remarks. I want to say, once again, thank you for sharing your story. And also, I don't mean to keep harping on the theme of the pastor and everything, but it seems to me, Seol, and I hope I don't embarrass you, but there's a certain amount of, they say, people who try to evangelize about Christianity, you have to like sow a seed. You keep going back until one day they're willing to accept it. when we were talking to, or when Mike was talking about how he would push you away, and then eventually he's like, yeah, is that kind of, did you kind of feel like, well, this is my, not your mission, but that it was almost like I got to keep coming back to him with my love, with my word.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. And then eventually he came
He
around.
listened. Well, 13 years hence, and you guys are still together, so that's
Yeah.
terrific.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, well, anyway, I'm gonna take a little bit of a commercial break here, and tell us about this program was sponsored by the 1,000 Cranes Project, and the 1,000 Cranes Project is the brainchild of Libby and Naomi Mitsushima, but it is really kind of its own grassroots funded thing. So they are always looking for financial help. Uh, if anyone has any ideas about grants or anything like that, send them Naomi's way. But even if you would like to click on a link, and if you could be so generous as to contribute to the GoFundMe, the link is https://gofund.me/FCC7D28B. Should I write that?
Yeah, why don't you put it in the chat, and then people can click on it if they like. Thank you for that, Linda. I think this has been a really moving presentation, and I'm so glad, Seol and Mike, that you came and spoke with us today. I want to thank all of you for participating in this, and especially Naomi and Emma and Wendy for working so hard, for Linda for co-facilitating. This is a kind of a new venture. It's something that is just beginning to flutter its crane wings and hopefully can be part of the solution. I think we have to come together as a community to try to make, the whole, all of our society more understanding, more compassionate, not towards mental health issues, as well as people in Asian cultures. I feel like I've learned so much today, and it's been really, really inspiring. I think that this message just needs to be heard widely, so that I think, when you meet someone and you put a human face on a category, and it's not just a label, but it's a human being, then you don't just say, oh, all those Asians, or all those people with schizophrenia, or all those this or that. It's a human being, and that just changes the way that we think about things. So it's like one person telling their story, you're actually speaking for so many more, I think.
Yeah, we just want to say before we end that, like, the reason, I think another reason why I like to say, like, we get to tell our story is because we will come to like an event like this and we're like the stars, but I really want to thank people like Naomi, Libby, like the volunteers, because they're the ones who are putting in hours, putting events like this together, and we get to just come and speak, and then everybody thanks us, but you guys are really the stars, because you guys are like we usually walk away with the credit. We usually, people walk away from this probably remembering us, but you guys are the ones who put hours into putting this together. So thank you so much.
And hopefully we can kind of stay in touch with each other. Naomi is very persistent, so you're going to find that she doesn't forget you.
Uh-huh.
She doesn't give up. Someone wrote in the chat, each peer matters. I so agree with that. So Naomi, I want to make sure we have time to talk about folding the cranes. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah,
Or
we kind of want to do the 5-item quiz.
the 5-item quiz. Okay, right. So
but the folding of the cranes is going to be done by Emma.
Okay,
And
okay,
she has a video, so if people
okay.
want to leave early, they can just download the video and do it at home, and then
Okay.
send the cranes to me. So maybe I should put my address up just in
Yeah,
case.
why don't you put your address and
Yeah.
maybe
sure.
the link to the
Okay.
video?
And the polling, you know, it's going to be really easy, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's really easy.
not
So
like,
so we have a couple of poll questions that we're hoping that you can answer right now. The way these polls work on Zoom is a small button will appear on your screen. You'll get to read the question and then you'll pick the answer that you think is the best answer. And we're going to share these answers with you, so you'll get to see how everyone feels. So the question that we're asking here is, why did Mike and Seol hide Mike's illness from Seol's family for so long? Was it because they were afraid that the family would judge and look down on him? Was it because they just never got the chance? Was it because she was afraid of getting disowned by the family? So these are three different possibilities. Why did Mike and Seol hide Mike's illness from Seol's family for so long? Which I think happens in every culture. But perhaps, as Seol said, is a little bit more intense in the Korean American culture because of the stigma. So I have, let's see, 17 of my 36. We've got 20 out of 36, so 55% have voted so far. Hoping to get a few more. Seol and Mike, are you curious how they might answer?
Yes.
They're waiting to see.
Maybe we just click on the bar that we think the answer corresponds
Yeah,
to.
you can click on the bar, and I believe you can click on more than one bar too if you think there's two answers. I think you
It's
can.
like a game show.
It's kind of like a game show, yeah, a little bit, except everyone gets to participate, so it's kind of fun. Let's see, we've got 24 out of 34, 70%. That's probably enough time. Oh, it didn't let you choose more than one. Someone wrote to me in the chat. Okay, maybe it only lets you choose one. Okay, I thought I set it up with multiple choice, but maybe I didn't. I set it up last week. All right, so I've got 70% voting. I'm going to end the polling and share the results. Let's see. Does everybody see the results? So you can see that 75% believed that it was because they were afraid that the family would judge and look down on him. Seol and Mike, is that correct?
Yeah, that one's correct.
That is the answer. Okay, great. So we have an additional question. In the Korean culture, what is Mike expected to do because he is the oldest son? Take care of his parents in their old age, be successful and make his parents proud, carry down the family name by having a son, all of the above. In the Korean culture, what is Mike expected to do because he is the oldest son? Getting quite a few votes here. All right, so let's download that. Okay, does everybody see the results? So everybody voted for all of them. They definitely got that message. Well done. Okay, we have our third polling question. Why are relationships between Asian immigrant parents and their children so complex? Because the children usually become disrespectful, because the children are conflicted between their parents' culture and the American culture, because the children don't want to learn about their parents' culture.
This one could be more than one answer.
It could. I'm not sure if it will let me. It really could be all three of those.
It could be. Someone here on the line speaking has the personal experience. Good one.
All right, so I'm going to end the polling there and download that. Okay. So does everybody see that? Gosh, I've got all these things in the way. So everybody chose because the children are conflicted between their parents' culture and, oh, does everybody see that? Everybody chose number 2, which is that the children are conflicted between their parents' culture and the American culture. All right, and then the fourth question is, I don't have a fifth question, but the fourth question is, what is one reason it's hard to talk to first-generation Koreans about mental illness? Many of them don't even believe that mental illness is real. They get angry when you bring up the topic. They get offended when you bring up the topic. What is one reason it's hard to talk to first-generation Koreans about mental illness? Okay. Could be all three.
Another one. The ambiguities of life.
Yes. All right, so I'm going to end the polling there. Download. Share results. So most people said it was because many of them don't even believe that mental illness is real. Seol and Mike, what do you think is the reasons that it is hard to talk to first-generation Koreans about mental illness?
Yeah, because we wrote these questions.
Okay.
So we meant it to be the first one.
Oh, you did? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, okay. But I guess it could be that they would get offended too, especially if you're saying like somebody in your family has a mental illness.
Yeah, they could be offended, like it's maybe damaging the family name or something like that.
Right.
Okay. All right. Beautiful. So that is the end of our poll. I think y'all did fantastically well on that test.
Yay, so everybody passed. Give yourself a little pat on the back. So we can start, Emma, to show how to fold the origami crane. Emma, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for coming today. And Mike and Seol, again, thank you so much for sharing such an inspiring story, so moving. I've gone ahead and shared a link to one tutorial that exists on YouTube for folding an origami crane. For people who might need to hop off, I understand it's past 3 o'clock already, but if you're able to stay with us, I'll go through a live demonstration. And I would just like to know if you can raise your hand or react. I just want to get a head count or, an idea of how many people already have their origami paper and can follow along.
Oops.
Let's see people, let's see. Okay, great. So let me go ahead and change my camera so that you can see what I'm doing. Oh. There we go. Sorry, it's a little awkward, but here's my origami paper. Can everybody see this pretty well?
Yes.
This lighting here.
Emma, you might want to post the video, on chat,
Yes,
so that
it's in the chat box. Can everybody see the link? It might be
it's
flooded away.
okay. So that way they can, download it and do it later if they don't have time.
Can you see
I'll
the?
put it in the chat right now as well.
It's it should be there. I can redo it again if you don't see it. Oh, thank you, Libby.
And I just want to point out that Mike and Sol's email is located in the chat as well if you want to keep in touch with them. So you can correspond with them by email.
Thank you, Libby. Thank you. All right, so I think Naomi sent 5 sheets that are folded like this, that are folded into quarters diagonally. And this actually usually is the first 2 steps already done in the crane, but I actually would like to add a couple of folds as that makes it a little bit easier because some of these folds get a little bit complicated. So I'd like for you to open back up this sheet. So mine looks like there's an X right here in the middle, since you've had the 2 folded diagonally already. And what I would suggest is you're going to take one edge and meet it to the other edge as a horizontal fold in half instead of diagonal. So you get this rectangle. And really, really fold down well so that you get this crease. And I'll try to go slowly so that you can catch everybody who's following along. Once you have that fold, open it back up, and you can do it on the other side as well. So kind of crossing the fold that you just made. I'm going to go in half the other way. I'm trying to meet the corners and be as precise as possible. I think origami as an art relies a lot on precision and being really careful to make nice, crisp and clean corners. I'm not really good at that, but I'm going to try my best. So now you should kind of have this star shape of creases if you open back your origami to its full sheet. Right. I'm going to go ahead and keep going. Actually, Libby and Naomi, if you can kind of keep an eye on people, if somebody needs a step repeated or anything, I'm happy to do it. But I'm just going to keep going ahead. We're going to go back to the triangle that we started with. So you fold your origami in half diagonally once, and then again, so mine's kind of like this. You end up with your quarter fold like this, smaller triangle. And we're back to our original shape that we had now with some extra creases. And you should have these 2 smaller triangles like this. The first step to this next fold is to hold down the bottom triangle that's closest to the table. And you should be left with this flap up. And the reason we made those creases earlier is because it's going to make it easier for you to push down this top layer into a square like this. So I can redo that. Yeah, perfect, perfect. You're going to take the triangle, push down this top corner, following the creases you made. And you should have this square right with the triangle. How are we doing? Are you ready for the next step? Okay. Right, you're going to flip that over and do the same to the other side, which you're going to hold down this square, becomes the bottom. And you take this big sail, kind of like a ship, and do the same where you press down the top. And it also folds out into a square. That one's a little more complicated. So, right, so we started.
So Emma,
Yes.
I'm wondering if maybe you want to just invite people to hold their foldings up, and so that you can take a look and
That's
see.
a great idea.
So as you're folding, if everybody wants to just hold up your origami, so that
Yeah.
Emma can take a look and see how we're doing.
Thank you, Libby. That's a great idea. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, perfect, Jessie. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right, go ahead. Sorry to
All
interrupt.
right. No problem. Thank you so much for that. That's a great idea. Okay, so now we're going to get back to the square. Okay, that's where we left off. So now you're left with the square that kind of has two layers. And there's actually a top and a bottom to the square. The bottom is where all of these edges are loose. And the top is where they all meet in a corner. So what you're going to do is on just one layer of the square, you're going to fold an outer corner into the center where the bottom of your square is the bottom of your fold, such as this. You see, so my edges are loose, but my fold is going to the center here. Okay, we're going to do the same to the other side. So you're going to end up with a kite with a square on the back. And just do another fold check-in if people can hold up their folds, their folded paper. I can make sure we're all on the right track.
There's one note in the chat saying, "Sorry, mine looks nothing like that."
Oh no! You know, the video that I posted goes pretty slowly too, so that might be a helpful thing to watch later on. But I understand. My origami usually doesn't look quite like it should. I understand. So great. I just saw some nice kites. These are also going to be creases. We're going to open them back up. And where these creases meet the edge of the paper, you're going to fold this top, all of the paper down to meet the creases like this. So you should be left with a triangle in the middle, like that. Yes, great, Stuart, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Ah, beautiful. Thank you, yes.
Very nice.
Beautiful, all right. So this next fold is a little bit tricky to see. So I'm gonna do it a couple times and I'll do it slowly. This triangle is going to be where we hold the paper down. You're gonna take just the top layer right here, right, separate these. You're gonna open it up like a mouth. And as you see, these two edges emerge. These edges you want to line up with the center line down the middle here. So as I hold this out, these edges come towards the center.
Misako just made a very good suggestion in the chat that if you would like to, you can save the chat because there's a lot of good information and resources that people have put in there. If you've never done that before, when you open the chat, there's a small area with 3 dots, and when you click on it, you can click. It should appear the ability to save the chat onto your system. If you're using a tablet, sometimes it's in a different location, and I'm not sure if you're here by phone. I'm not sure how to do that on a phone. But if you have a desktop, that's where you can do it.
Thanks, Libby. So I had the fold, but I'm going to redo it because it is a little bit complicated. Holding down this back triangle, you bring back this top layer. And as you do that, these outer edges will come in and meet in the center as so. So you'll be left with this diamond shape with the square on the back. And if you'd like me to do the fold again, I can certainly do that. Great. Thank you, Jessie. That's beautiful. All right. How is everyone doing? Do we have our diamond shape? All right. I'm going to move on. We're going to flip this shape over and do the same to the other side. So remember, this is the bottom of your square. So take the outer edges and make them meet in the middle so that you have another kite, is what I like to call it. Okay, we're repeating the creases we made on the other side. Okay, and in the same way, you can fold this triangle down as well to make that crease. So you should have the same creases on this side. And then, as we did on the other side, pull the top layer back and make the same exact fold on this side, if I can. There we go. So now we should have this skinnier diamond on both sides. And so the bottom of the diamond has legs, and the top is where you have the beginnings of your crane. All right, how are we doing? Can I check in with everyone on their folds?
So if you want to hold up your origami, Emma can check it out.
Yeah, and I can definitely redo any steps if somebody's lost or confused. All good. Great, thank you, Kate. That's beautiful. All right. Jessie, I think you're getting some help. Yeah, this one.
The other side just got confusing. This is now what it looks like.
Oh no!
I'm doing good.
Oh my gosh. I feel you.
She wrote, "My fold is totally around my fingers. It's a lost cause, but I will practice."
Yes, the link that we shared in the chat, I think, goes pretty slowly, and I think it's pretty easy to understand. So, and you can pause and play that at your own pace. So I think that's a great way to do it as well. All right, I'm going to keep going. So you have your diamond that has 2 layers. We're going to do a similar fold that we did. Remember, this is your bottom with the legs. You're going to bring this outer edge in and fold it to the center like we did before. Like this. And same to the other side. So we're getting an even skinnier diamond here. So. Okay. And then we're going to flip it over and do the same to the other side. How are we doing?
Yours looks good, Emma. Your folds are really crisp.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. It took me a lot of tries to remember how to do this.
Did you have to practice?
I did, because I'm not naturally inclined for origami. I think. I'm a very like, oh, this looks about right kind of person.
Plus, she probably has a real origami paper.
Yeah, I have some.
Yeah.
My mom is Japanese, so we have some origami at home.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, and what we have is American-made origami paper, which is not,
It's not quite the same.
it's not quite exactly 15 by 15 centimeters.
Yeah, sometimes it's off by a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
Makes it
But,
harder
you know,
to make
America,
the
right?
fold. All right, so how are we doing? Do we have something that looks somewhat like this? The skinny
How's it going, y'all?
Anyone is brave enough to share their work? Oh, that's looking great, Jesse. You got your diamond.
You lost me at that folding the edges, but I'll watch the video later.
Okay, I appreciate you sharing. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on for the sake of time. But from here, you kind of you have these legs and the top. These are what are going to become your wings. What you're going to do is fold one layer down as far as it will go. And the key here is to kind of try to align this center crease with the center, I think, edges here, if you can. Mine is almost going to do that. Like so, as far as it'll go, and then do the same to the other side. So fold this down as far as it'll go. Okay. This is going to be the body eventually. We're a couple steps from being finished here. So these are your wings, and you can fold them back up like this because we need to reach the other side. So I kind of like to describe this step as making this half and this half meet together. I pinch them together like this. Oops. Or at least I try to, right? So you just pinch the one layer, and then you can do the same with the other layer like this. And if you fold it,
Emma, is your mom proud that you're teaching everybody origami?
yeah, she was like, "Are you sure you can do this?" She would be a much better teacher. She's very, very good at it, but I didn't get that gene, I think. Right, so, and I can redo that step because it is kind of tricky. So,
Emma, this is Linda.
Yes, hi.
You were saying about you didn't get that gene.
Yeah.
I say this with love and as a sister or half sister. That's the Chinese part of you holding you back. Chinese don't roll that way. It's, you know.
That's funny. Oh, that's so funny.
You know, they say that anal versus oral cultures, Chinese are definitely much more oral. And if you look at ikebana versus like English garden flower arranging, I'm definitely more of an English garden flower arranger myself.
That is funny. Yeah, my dad is Taiwanese, so I think I kind of I relate very hard to that.
Well, the Taiwanese, because of the Japanese colonization, they got some of that.
That's true.
That's not native to China.
Pam says she folded the wrong side up. Does it still work?
Oh.
Or does she need to refold it?
The wrong side. It would be good to know which side.
Can you show Pam? Pam, can you show your bird so that Emma can see?
If not, that's okay. I'm wondering, you might have folded these sides wrong. In which case you can flip it the other side and you'll have extra creases, but you can redo the fold on the other side. Okay, so I was going to redo this fold because it is kind of tricky. Take this side, fold it together, and do the same on this side. So you have this, looks kind of like a fox.
Oh yeah, it does look like a fox. Those are the ears.
Yeah, the ears and the very long nose. Okay, so almost done. Thanks for hanging in there with me. These long triangles are going to become the tail and the head. So what you're going to do is take just one and fold it up as far as it'll go, trying to stay in the center.
Mhm.
Same on the other side. Fold it all the way up like this. And at this point, you can pick whichever one is the head and the tail. So I'm going to just pick this side. I'm going to make, bring a little closer, a tiny little beak here. Fold it down.
That's the head of the crane.
That's the head of the crane, starting to come together. Okay.
It's cute.
Yeah. And I think I made the beak a little long. Usually they're a little smaller, I think. Let's see.
It's so perfect though. It looks
Yeah.
amazing.
I agree.
Well, I've had a lot more practice. So I promise you my first crane did not look like this. Okay, and you have this on the back. And what needs to happen now is the transformation into the crane. So fold the beak down, that'll help. You're going to turn it to its side and separate the folds like this so that you open the wings back up. Okay, you can do that again. So this is the front that we had. You fold open the wings like this. And then when you fold these back down, you have your kind of wonky crane.
Cute.